Okay, Sistas fans. Now, this video is, you know, it's pretty interesting because I wanted to talk about this subject considering, I've already done it. I've talked about it in my live stream, in the review itself. First of all, I hope that this week and next week, Amazon Prime drops the episode early. I don't know why, but it really felt like a load off to be able to watch the episode commercial free early in the day. I can get my review up. That way, that night is pretty relaxing. I can just chill from like 9 to 10, throw out a few tweets, do a live stream, and, have a good time after that. But episode 9 just didn't do it for me. I just really wasn't, I really wasn't feeling it. Now, upon rewatch, because I did rewatch it, I still feel the same way. Now, don't get me wrong. Isolated the first 10 minutes, despite me not really liking it because it was a whole lot of nothing, a whole lot of back and forth bickering. It was a hilarious scene. Like, if you did a scene, just a frame by frame of it, the different characters and their reactions to certain lines of dialogue and whatnot was just amazing. But as a whole, the episode didn't work for me because it did little to nothing to move the plot along. And personally speaking, the worst moment that felt like a true slap in the face that Tyler Perry gave the viewers was when Danny opened the paper and it was blank. And I'm like, all this anticipation, thinking that, oh wow, we'll finally find out who the daddy is. And then we get shit. But what made it work was Danny's reaction was the same reaction a lot of us fans had. It's like, we're too through with this. I mean, even coming down to Andy not wanting her to open the envelope, but Danny's like, you know what? Hey, look, give me this envelope before I take it from you, because this thing has been dragged out for way too long. But then when you get to the other scenes of the episode, what didn't work for me? Like, for example, was it great to see Danny and Preston on a date? Yes, but at the same time, what made the scene not work for me was Danny constantly bringing up the past, about Preston being so unsure and whatnot and messy, despite her being the one that said to his face, sometimes I want you, other times I don't. I honestly don't know what I want. Yet, you always make fun of Preston being the one who's confused and whatnot. Then when it came to Calvin and Maurice, to be honest, I didn't really hate the scene, because it wasn't super long. It did have a good moment for Maurice. And then even the final scene with Logan was a short cliffhanger. Then, of course, we get to the Gary and Andy stuff. And raise your hand if you are beyond tired of this, back and forth with the two. We know this is eventually going to lead to a new love interest, especially with Andy being on a dating website. But we really didn't need that scene. The Zach and Fatima scene was great because it truly felt like, oh wow, this is a team I know. They're goofy, they're over the top, and they work well off each other. But the first 20 minutes of the episode, we are inside of the apartment. And then pretty much everybody but Karen is standing outside of the apartment. And then we got Sabrina and Karen, and then Sabrina and Pam. It was just a hot mess. My nephew watched it. He loved it because he was laughing his behind off. My mom watched like the first 10 minutes because she, was walking past my room when I was like, taking notes yesterday afternoon, and she sat down and watched a few minutes, and she said, you know what, this is dragged out. But she was laughing at some of the different antics, specifically Danny during the entire scene, like, from her putting her foot on the envelope, trying to slide it towards her, or, when she tried to get away as soon as Fatima lifted her purse, but then Sabrina drug her back. When Karen shoved Andy down. It was funny, but like I said, I'm a person that looks for substance, because while this episode did give me several laughs, it didn't give me anything to work off of in terms of, okay, like, sure, we're going to see Hayden pondering about whether or not to go through with the annulment, and then we're going to see about the DNA stuff, but who really cares at this point? I mean, find a new song to sing. We are tired of the same stuff over and over again. And when you get to the first scene, it's just nothing. I mean, I don't want to condone violence, but Hell, I was ready for Fatima to slap somebody or to Karen to pull the trigger on her gun just to spice things up, because you can only hear, "Get the hell out of my house, Fatima, you bitch." It's like, oh, you know what? I'll slap your ass. What you gonna do? What? That only works for so long. When it's 10 minutes of the same back and forth, it gets old. And then kind of like with the salon, where you had way too many characters, it kind of felt the same way here to a lesser extent. Aaron just popped the hell up out of nowhere. Pam showed up out of nowhere. Maybe it would have been different if, let's say, she knocked on the door to talk with Karen's like, "Karen, are you okay? Pam, this ain't a good time." "Well, I just wanted to tell you something about Aaron. I saw him at the coffee shop and then I followed him." See, that would have been something. But for her to just show up and talk with Sabrina briefly before leaving, that was nothing. Seriously, this episode had opportunities to move the story along, but it really didn't. And I feel like it failed to deliver on fan expectations. But then again, Sisters, the bar has been set so low for so long. To be honest here, man, if I remember my ranking correctly, I think season 5 is just the worst season of the show yet. But when I really think about season 6, my goodness, it hasn't been that great either. I think there was was it episode 8? What episode did I give like a 17 or something? I gave it like a high score. Was it the week before last? I know it was a recent episode, but the season started off a bit promising, but the moment, you know, everybody found out about Karen and the fire, that's when it kind of tanked for me. So I don't know. Maybe this isn't the worst season. I don't think it's the worst. But it definitely hasn't left a good impression. I feel like, if nothing else, season 6 is just a filler season, because we're trying to make it to season 7, the promised land of new writers and character motivations and stuff. So season 6 is like, I'm going to sit through this crap to get to what I really want. That's kind of what it feels like. So I don't know. Like I said, the episode 3 out of 10 is a lot better than a bunch of the negatives and crap I was giving season 5. So yeah, that's the thing. Don't let my score influence your decision. I mean, watch the episode, and if you love it, then you love it. I just know my scores aren't always a reflection of the majority, unless it's low. A lot of people do agree when it's super low, but yeah, like if you laughed and whatnot, that doesn't necessarily make it a bad episode. But my point system is kind of based off of, okay, how well was the episode structure? How was the pacing? Was it repetitive dialogue? Did the episode do anything to move the storylines for characters, you know, further? And I'm not going to lie, I'm biased at times, because sometimes there are characters with certain assets that I can't help but pay attention to, like Tamara or Jasmine. And I might bloat the scores ridiculously, like when Deja was first introduced in Zatima. But it's just, you know, it's just one of those things where you could tell when I'm being ridiculous versus when I'm being like very, very clear about, hey, this episode got a 10 out of 10 because of this, or this episode got a -2 because of this, that, and this. But yeah, as a whole, this episode wasn't good. But in isolated bits, you know the best way to put it? Iron Man 2 and Avengers Age of Ultron. If you're an MCU fan, you'll get it. Those two movies are kind of loathed by the fan bases, or the fan base, but in a way it makes sense, because as movies, Iron Man 2 and Age of Ultron aren't really that good. But the thing about them is, they aren't good movies, but they have a lot of great scenes. You know, like the Avengers party in Avengers Tower, or Hulkbuster versus the Incredible Hulk. Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. There are just so many moments in that film that are great, but as a whole, the movie isn't it. Iron Man 2, personally, I love Iron Man 1 is in my top 5 MCU movies. Iron Man 2 isn't in my top 5, but there are a lot of times where I'm like, you know what, I think the second one is better because Justin Hammer is hilarious. But, you know, as a whole, Iron Man 2 doesn't work as a film, but it's made up of a lot of great scenes. So that's what I'm saying. This episode had a decent amount of great, hilarious scenes, but as an episode itself, it's about 40 minutes of fluff. Now, could this be build up for the mid-season finale? Maybe, but this episode really didn't do much. I mean, how long have people wanted a Karen and Fatima face off, even though they've had a number of them up to this point? But it seemed like when shit was really about to go down, nothing really happened. So there you go. All right, well, thanks so much for tuning in. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.